In the pale, flickering glow of the streetlight outside, I dragged the last box into my new apartment. It was a modest one-bedroom in a weathered building nestled in a forgotten corner of the city. Cheap, quiet, and just far enough from the main drag to feel like a fresh start. Apartment 7B was my blank slate. The first few nights were uneventful, save for the groans of old plumbing and the occasional thud of footsteps above. Then came the screeching. It started faintly, barely louder, then the rustle of wind through the dying tree outside my window. A metallic wail that clawed at my ears and crawled under my skin. It came in bursts, stopping just long enough to let the silence deepen before returning, louder and more piercing. At first I dismissed it as the building settling or some nocturnal animal, but by the third night, the sound had a cadence, an unnatural rhythm, like a broken song. Sleep became impossible. I tried earplugs, then a white noise machine, but nothing could drown out the screeching. It was as though the noise seeped into my head, bypassing my ears entirely. On the fifth night, frustration turned to curiosity. I grabbed a flashlight and followed the sound. The screeching seemed to emanate from the walls, sometimes shifting from the ceiling to the floor. I pressed my ear to the cold plaster and froze. Beneath the screech, there was something else. Whispers. Faint, garbled, like a radio station caught between frequencies. "Who's there?" I called, my voice cracking. The sound stopped. For a moment, the silence felt heavier than the noise. The next day, I asked the building manager about the noise. His face paled, and his hand trembled as he adjusted his glasses. "It's an old building," he said quickly, avoiding my gaze. "It makes sounds." He clearly knew more, but I didn't press him. Not yet. That night, the screeching began again, but this time, it was accompanied by a dragging noise, like nails scraping across tile. I followed it, my heart pounding, until I stood before the door to the apartment next to mine. 7A. The dragging stopped. My hand hovered over the doorknob, but before I could turn it, I heard a voice, faint, whispering my name. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. The door creaked open, just a crack, and an icy draft poured out, carrying with it the stench of mildew and decay. I caught a glimpse of the interior, a room shrouded in darkness, its walls smeared with jagged symbols that glistened as though freshly painted. Then the screech returned, louder than ever, a deafening crescendo that forced me to clamp my hands over my ears. The door slammed shut. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. By the end of the week, I was a wreck, plagued by insomnia and paranoia. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of my vision. Whispers followed me, even in daylight. Desperate, I broke into 7A. The air inside was suffocating, thick with dust and something more sinister. The apartment looked abandoned, but the walls were covered in those same jagged symbols. In the center of the living room was an old phonograph, its needle skipping over a cracked vinyl record, emitting a faint, distorted screech. As I reached to stop it, the record spun faster, the screech morphing into a guttural roar. The walls trembled and the symbols began to bleed, dark rivulets running toward the floor. I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut, trapping me inside. The last thing I saw before everything went black was my own reflection in the phonograph's brass horn, only it wasn't me. It was a hollow-eyed figure with a twisted grin, mouthing the words, "You're home now." When I woke, I was back in my bed, the apartment eerily silent. But the screeching hasn't stopped. Now, it's inside me.